Okay, well, thank you, Mel, for taking this session on digital photography. Ready, set, go.
Great. I just need to do all the necessary sharing. And that. And can you all see that?
Yep.
Yep.
Good. That's a picture I took in Wynyard not very long ago.
All right.
I did decide to open the session with that because it's just a bit of a hint as to where photography is these days. It's quite extraordinary what you're able to represent through pictures. That obviously is time-lapse and welded together to create a bit of motion, but it's a striking effect. The first thing I want to say is, like Jacko, you are individuals. So you'll take pictures of what you want, when you want, how you want, and from what's available to take. So what I'm about doing here is looking at some of the things that are problems in pictures and the things that you will principally want to eliminate from what you're doing, because everybody has their own particular ambition for the pictures they want to take. Apropos, please jump in and ask questions as we go through. I can't presuppose what you're wanting to learn or understand or whatever. I'll also lapse occasionally into a little bit of the technical aspects of photographs, only because it's essential to understand why pictures perform the way they do. If you want to get a pencil or pad or something like that to take any notes, I'd encourage it and welcome it. Okay, try to keep this down to 5 simple guidelines that are essentially about understanding the medium and, as I said, eliminating the problems. The first thing to say is that clearly, but not always obviously, photography is about light and by degrees its absence. Light is the visual medium we're looking to capture, and light, of course, is in the full spectrum of colour. Now, colour will react in different circumstances, different ways, and we'll look at that a little bit further on. The KISS principle, it's simple, stupid. There are probably 98.76% approximately of photographs taken are scenes that may be populated by little stick figures in one corner or the other, or indeed in the centre. Backgrounds just intrude on pictures that are taken time and time again, and they're not the point. Have a point of interest. If you're trying to say something with your picture, even if it's a family reunion, or even a meal you're eating, whatever, try to create a point of interest so that your picture is saying something to the person who is viewing, or even saying something to you about recalling a time long ago, like maybe Monday, when the memory starts to dim. Tell a story. Pictures are allegedly worth 1,000 words. Conclusion I come to somewhat reluctantly, but telling a story with pictures, picture essays can be quite powerful, especially when you're looking at things like travel. You usually have a point of origin and you have a point of conclusion, and you've got all the lampposts in between. And you can weave those together or string them together to tell a story. And the story can be quite simple, The story can be about a reunion, it can be about a get-together over a dinner or whatever. But by stringing a number of images together, you can tell that story. And finally, and probably the most important thing, is to become your own worst critic. The beauty of the digital age is you can take getting close to an infinite number of photographs, and then you can cull. You can say that fails for this reason, this one succeeds for another reason. So you keep your successes and you bury your failures. Okay, what do you take pictures of? Family, travel, flowers, hobbies and interests, sport. Am I missing anything? Has anybody got a special interest that they want to take a picture of? Don't all speak at once.
Some macros of,
Fungi.
of small things.
Fungi in particular.
Oh, insects,
Yes.
rocks, lichen, you know,
Yeah.
you name it.
Macro or micro, depending which school you come from. Photography is a significant field in its own right.
Maureen, just interrupt when you want to say something.
Yeah, please, anybody, just speak
Oh, I
up.
just want to say, can we add clouds to that list?
I had a cloud picture in, but took it out. Clouds. I have an endless fascination with clouds. I'm still that little boy lying on the side of the hill looking up and imagining all manner of creatures washing across the blue. So clouds are great.
I'd like to drop in astrophotography now too.
Drop.
I'd like to drop in astrophotography as a subject too.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to make a note because it's getting busy. Astro, clouds, macro, good. Reese, you take a bit of macro photography, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the contention for you? What is it that you're looking for?
I just do it totally my own way. I've not had any kind of instruction on it, and would be interested in just overall, really.
Right. Okay.
I think it's an area a lot of people do take macros and they don't always work. You know, the fact that if you're taking something really small and you've got a small depth of field, you might get the feelers of the insect in focus, but not the wings, you know, that sort of.
Yeah, depth of field is the biggest issue. And for anybody who doesn't know, the depth of field is the zone that is in focus. Outside the depth of field, the picture starts to get blurry. And the closer you get to your subject, the narrower the depth of field is. The other thing I always think is a problem with macro photography, Reese, is the lighting, because you are so close, you tend to get a lot of side lighting unless you fill it with flash.
Yes.
So they're two issues that that arise immediately with that. Maureen, what were you looking for with cloud photography?
Well, I imagine that you might be using filters of different sorts to get effects. So you could say something about that. But I do, you know, you see this amazing thing, and when you get your photo back, it doesn't look quite what you imagine it might look like. Yeah.
If I can suggest to you, one of the when you're metering, if you can manually meter, try to meter of some fairly neutral tone. Common use among photographers is to meter off the palm of your hand. If anybody can see me, you just aim your camera at the palm of your hand and you take that as the light reading, because a standard light measurement is an 18% grey card, but the palm of your hand is a reasonable facsimile for that. I say that for the reason, Maureen, that you tend very often to get too two contrasts. Even within clouds, you can get dark grays and brilliant whites, but you'll very often get brilliant whites alongside what can be quite dark blue, depending on the time of day especially. But it's that contrast range that is your enemy. So you've got to decide whether you want that brilliant blue and you'll sacrifice detail in the cloud, or you'll go after the detail in the cloud. And indeed, if you're taking clouds, I'd suggest it's the detail that you're looking for.
Can I, sorry, Mel, to interrupt, you're echoing. Can everybody please mute themselves unless they're asking a question? It won't be you, Mel, it'll be there's the number of audios we've got on.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. Yes, thank you. Again, there will be elements of relevance that will come up as we go through, Maureen. Alan, astrophotography, what is it you're looking to take there? Are you looking to add a camera to a telescope, or use... Sorry?
Sorry, I just muted myself.
Yes.
Well, it's a very big subject, so it's sort of almost the opposite of macro, isn't it? I mean, it really is the big thing. There's so many different things. You've got very low light levels, and I know it's a topic in itself. I was only just mentioning it as part of your list, because it is a fairly specialized area. You're working at such low light levels, and often with exposures that can be up to hours long.
Exactly, and of course the problem you have when you have exposures that are hours long, a simple little pinprick of light becomes quite a crescent halfway across the sky.
Yeah, there's I'm sorry, I'm not going to give my talk, but there is a lovely little story. Back in the 1930s, there was an astronomer on a big telescope, had an exposure so long that he actually sat in the freezing cold for 4 hours on one night, actually getting this plate there, and then he tucked it away carefully, came back the next night and did another 4 or 5 hours, and a third night he added to that, at the end of which he realized he'd got the plate backwards in the holder.
Right.
I'll mute myself now.
Every photographer has a similar story of tragedy. Okay, what are the elements of photography? Light and color. When you look at that, can you all see that scene of the most beautiful little village in Austria called Hallstatt? That has several light sources. You'll see up in the top right-hand corner, there's still a bit of ambient light in the sky. It's cloudy. It's giving the overall landscape a very blue tinge. But then in the village itself, you'll see a number of light sources. And in fact, those light sources are variable too. Some are quite warm. The lights on the spire of the church are quite cool. And thereby hangs a tale. The temperature of light is typically measured in degrees Kelvin. And the higher the degrees Kelvin, the higher the number of degrees Kelvin, the bluer the light. To give you an example, that light there that you can see is probably a tungsten light, and it would have a color temperature of about 3,200 degrees. That there is rather bluish, and I would suggest that's probably about 4,500 degrees Kelvin. The light of the sun at midday at the equator is about 5,500 degrees Kelvin. And back in the days when Kodak and others had to make film that was intended to be exposed under certain light conditions, you used to be able to buy a film that was rated at 3,200 degrees Kelvin for taking pictures under tungsten lighting. But normal daylight film was rated at 5,000. I say that simply so that you appreciate the fact that light comes in different colors, and that will cause different reactions in your photograph. Now, background, there's a picture of an iris, I think it is it? I'll stand corrected by the botanists. Yes, okay, good.
Yes,
A few affirmative nods there. Through no fault of my own, it happened to pop up in my backyard. Bokeh is an effect where you selectively focus on the subject, but you keep the background out of focus. Now you'll see the background in that is quite out of focus. Even the rear of the flower is out of focus. That's the bokeh effect, selective focus. Or you can eliminate it altogether. Which do you think is the most striking picture? Doesn't matter. The question is rhetorical, thank you. But the reason I illustrate those two, whoops, sorry, what happened there? Okay.
We're still getting your iris, your second iris picture.
Are you?
Yep.
Okay. I've gone to an alternative screen. So, still getting it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I've got it now too.
Good.
So everybody's happy. Yeah, that second one against the background is in that particular instance, it was simply the exposure. The background was there, but it was so dark behind it, I didn't need to contrive a background like that. But I have been known to hang the odd black t-shirt behind a subject for the sake of being able to bring it forward from the background like that. A common mistake is to not look beyond your subject. They were two who were roaming around the, what do you call it, New Year's Eve at Burnie, and I just wanted to grab a quick shot of them. I should have practiced what I'm preaching here and looked beyond the background. I'm getting funny little signs popping up here.
Yes, Kathy's asking if you can do that on a mobile phone, the bokeh effect.
The bokeh effect, you can, Kathy, but you've got to move in very close to it. If you're standing back any more than a metre, the phone will average the exposure, and you can't do it quite so well. But if you move in quite close, you'll find that the phone will typically select the dominant subject and it'll drop the other out. That's not universally true because I don't use every phone in the world, but I know with my latest iPhone iteration, it does work. Sorry, back to the Wonder Woman and the Viking or whomever. They were two very picturesque subjects, but they're absolutely destroyed by their background. Obviously, Neptune has a satay skewer there. I'm not quite sure what Wonder Woman's shield is. Perhaps it's how she delivers pizzas. I don't know. But it's just it's a pack of poo ticket. That it's terrible. I love the subject, and I just hope to encounter them again someday, and I'll do it properly. Whoops. There we are. When you're looking at design elements, photography responds well to simplicity. Again, it's when I suggest that you look beyond your subject. One of the things where you can, and this is not an example of that, but where you can walk around your subject. It's not recommended for boats at sea or Grand Canyon tourists, whatever. There can be consequences. But as you can see there that the light is coming in from the left-hand side, and the impact that it has on the boat there, the light is absence on the other side. So if you walk to that side, you're going to get what you call rim lighting, which is just light around the edges. But even that can be a striking photograph. So by walking around your subject, you're going to see what the opportunities are to exploit the light to the best advantage. Perspective is another thing. Try to find elements in relatively complex pictures. Try to find elements that will, in fact, take the eye on tour. Those rail tracks, I think, do draw you off into the distance to look at that headline. The science says that's what's happened. That is what happens, and of course there are always exceptions to that. People will find their own way to navigate a picture, but lines, perspective particularly, does help to guide. Okay, some characteristics of light. There's a light source there, and you can see there are shadows. There are walls that are backlit. All of these are some of the dynamics that you're confronted with when you're looking at your pictures. The best light that is constantly recommended is that you should have the light source over your shoulder, behind you. Not so behind you that your shadow falls in the picture, but if you've got quite direct lighting, you will get the best illumination of your subject. Now that mightn't be what you're looking for.
That's a pretty specky photo, Mel.
Yeah, yes. I did have to change my pants shortly after that, but that's another example of direct sunlight. And one of the clues you'll always get when you've got the sun over your shoulder is you will have the shadows going away from you. Sounds simple? Don't always think of it until it's time to take the photograph and you think, where is my light source and what's that doing to my subject? Of course, direct light means that because the shadows are falling behind, your subject usually obscures the shadow. When you've got light that is in front of the camera, you have what is called contre-jour, against the light. Where the main sources, it can make for quite dramatic pictures. There's still a little bit of detail left in the shadow side of that photograph, but it was deliberately exposed for the background so that the background would be bright and it would cast everything else in shadow. It's also framed, which I think, pardon me, but I think adds somewhat to the drama. But backlighting can be very effective. That's Penguin Beach, I don't know, maybe something like an hour after sunrise. Just that as the tide was going out and there was these little rivulets of retreat by the waves, and the sun falling on the very wet surface creates reflections like that. Shooting into the light can give you some wondrous effects. Available light, does that ring a bell, Annie? Available light is shooting by the light that's available. It doesn't necessarily bathe the subject in light. That was taken during the acoustic life of sheds last year. And there were just a couple of strong spots that were either side of the, what was she? She was a keyboard player, I think. And I thought it made for a really bold picture. Unfortunately, I couldn't move around to be right in front, but I also wanted to capture the bold geometry of those receding lines replicated in the corrugated iron across the ceiling. These bold concrete shapes here, but the two peacock feathers of light going up the wall either side of the subject, I thought made it look quite strong. In retrospect, and I've just reminded myself looking at that now, one of the advantages of that was that the distant light actually picked the subject out a little bit in silhouette. So that was a consequential bonus. Available light again. Now there's an absolute cocktail of lights there. There's artificial light, there's sunlight coming in, there's incandescent lights, and you can see on instruments and faces that various light sources are having various effects. Just to take Lucky Oceans as an example, that face there, he's got light on the right side of, or his left side of his face, coming from incandescent lights, so it's quite warm. He's got light that's reflecting the blue on the other side of his face, so it's very cool. Then you've got a bit of sunlight coming in through here. You've got reflections by chrome items, etc. So multiple light sources like that, particularly if they have different color temperatures and they're playing differently on the subject, can have quite a striking effect. Now, cross-lighting. Cross-lighting can be quite dramatic. You can see there that one half of the subject is reasonably well lit, but I was prepared to let the rest of it go to shadow for the sake of having that very sculptured look. Somewhat intended to be a little bit of a metaphor for the man who is making shapes with wood too. There's a very good example of cross-lighting, and give you a bit of a clue. If ever you're wondering what the light source is and you've got a subject like that, look at their eyes. You'll see in that woman's eyes that there's a rather large light source that is off to the left of frame, off to her right. It's reflected in her eyes. So I immediately know that's a picture that was probably taken beside an open window. And that's always a good light source because it's directional, but it's also diffused, so it's soft. It's directional enough so that it will sculpt the contours of the face, but it's diffused enough so that you don't get, you know, hot light and deep dark. So it's balanced. Now, color temperatures of light. Early morning sun gives you a warm light. Now that's not exaggerated, that is a warm light. That's sunrise on Mount Hicks. So, but you can see how in parts of the picture that are probably correctly exposed, or at least exposed by ambient light, they're quite natural in their colors. But this is golden where the sun, the low angle sun is hitting it. Now, again, warm light is something that you can exploit in your photographs, but unless you're deliberately doing it, it will make your photographs look unnatural. That's a picture. Sorry, can you see that?
Yeah, the family, yeah.
Yeah. There's so much that's wrong with that. The only thing that's in focus is the character cat on the shirt there. But I still love the photograph. It's just captured, I think, 3 glowing faces that are looking warmly into the camera under incandescent light, so that it gives that warm tone. But again, a technical failure that I think made for an evocative picture. To give you some idea of the effect that colour can have, or the colour the light can have, that sleeve there is a dark brown.
Mm.
Now, cool light. Light is coolest when the sun is highest in the sky. And bearing in mind in Tasmania in the wintertime, I think the highest you get is about 50 degrees off the horizon. So there's always, the sunlight here is coming through quite a bit of atmosphere, which tends to take some of the blue light out. But that, does that look cool to you?
Yep.
Okay. Truth is, it was about 40 degrees that day. So, light is no guide to ambient temperature. Yeah. Here's an example. This is completely uncorrected. I hope you can see that if you look at the white faces of the horses, but also the complexion of the farmer there, there's it's too blue to be natural. But that's because it was a very overcast day, which is great because it doesn't cast a deep shadow across the man's face from his cap. And it infills all the shadows, but it does give you that cool light. To make me happy with that, I would want to pull some of the blue light out of it in Photoshop, but that would be tampering with nature. The other thing about cool light is that, as I said, there's pluses and minuses. One of the minuses is that when you get heavy overcast light, it tends to desaturate a lot of the brighter colours. I just thought this was a worthy example because you can see the red in the various traffic lights, but when you look at the flags, even when you look at the yellow there, look at these signs here that are all meant to be colourful and distracting, they're not so. It tends to pull the range of colour down dramatically. Now, light can create a mood, something like that. It's to me, that's a very happy scene. I just that red and all those other colours just seem gay to me, and I'm talking gay in the once conventional system of the word. Now that to me is deep and dark, notwithstanding that we've got a message here from God that speaks to disapproval. So reflected light will affect the colour of other items around it. You'll notice that outside there's a very strong light there. It's coming in, falling on that zygo. The green on this side of the zygo is quite affected. You can see the reflected colours around the windowsill as well. So if you're going to pose nano beside a lime green wall, be prepared for a serious loss of complexion. The colour will affect the look. So beware reflected light. Beware shadows. That's, you can see there are strong designs there, but all the shadows tend to just add to confusion. You've got angles where you've got tonal differences. You've got all of this shadowed images down here that just make for confusion. You don't know what you're looking at or what the point of the picture is. Okay. Oh, sorry. No, we're out of, sorry. So what are we learning about light? Light creates the shapes of the subject, whether it's backlit so that you get rim lighting, whether it's front lit so that you get every detail illuminated, whether it's cross lit so that you sculpt and add drama to your subject. To make sure you've got what you want, rotate your subject or rotate yourself. Walk around your subject if you can. Look for ways that you're going to minimize the background distractions unless you're trying to picture somebody who is necessarily being taken in context. Texture and contour, light affects those. You get cross lighting will give you exaggerate the texture and contour. Front lighting will reduce it. Backlighting will eliminate it. And above all, beware of the background. There's many a good picture that's ruined by the fact that the background overwhelms. Create the mood. Now, that not only depends on lighting, it also depends on pose. If you're taking pictures of people, if you, let's just move on and see what we, okay. In terms of composition, fill the frame. So get up close and personal, not too close in some cases. So exercise a bit of judgment. Leo there, I'm quite sure would be happy to entertain you for lunch. Fill the frame. Now that's a picture of a living room, sparsely populated by a couple of grandchildren. Really, the picture there is that. Would you agree? Mm. Again, the question's rhetorical. But he's the unhappiest Superman I think I've ever seen. He wasn't a volunteer. Again, a playground or people. What's the point? If you want the playground, by all means, remember you're Jacko, you're an individual. If you want to take a picture of the playground, I'm not quite sure what people in the distance or tourist buses contribute to that picture. Whereas if it's two people you know and love especially, and you want to have a record of the day in the park, then take a picture of the two people you know and love. It's quite interesting how even the most abstract subjects can be fascinating if you move in. I'm taken there by the tortured wood behind the wire cage. I just think that yeah, it suggests something to me, but then I'm in therapy, so. Look at composition. Can I tell you that as a journalist, one of the things we used to say is if you have to interview children, get down to their level. Don't stand there and look down at them and ask questions or talk to them or whatever. Get down to their level. It pays considerably greater dividends if you do it with your picture. Now, I, among all of us, have certain mobility problems. I can't get down there easily, or even if I do get down there easily with gravity's assistance, I can't get back up a lot. But what I can do is crouch down and put the camera between my feet and take a picture that way. So you can always find a way to adapt so that you get the picture that you want to. I particularly like taking pictures on the ocean side as waves come in, etc. But I like to do it from wave eye height. So I do have the camera between my ankles on quite the occasions. This to me I think is a very good example of how using light will emphasize the texture. Now, two things about that photograph. First of all, at the base of that, there's a box for collection of donations. There's, I think you can see off to the right there, there's musical instruments. It's quite busy at the bottom of that picture. And no matter how much I look at it full frame, my eye finishes up roaming around the the junkyard at the foot. Whereas what I wanted to look at was the expression and the texture of that garment. And that necessarily meant that I had to move until I had the least obscure background and adjust the camera upwards so that I eliminated the junkyard at the person's foot. And it makes, I think, of course you're all available to contest, but I think it makes an infinitely better picture. Sometimes pictures, they don't need to be properly lit to see the point of them. The best I can do there, that was an in-store display, but I kind of liked the way it picked out the angles of the limbs, etc., and perhaps the fig leaf as well, but also the texture of the hair, the wave of the hair, etc. I wasn't so much interested in getting a correct exposure, but using those highlights to create shapes and configuration of, you know, a human body. Ah, I didn't realize that was fade. That may be familiar to some. Do you know Evandale at all? There's an Anzac memorial in Evandale, and that has a trooper. I'm not quite sure if he's just thrown a grenade or whatever, but that I walked around that statue. I have pictures taken from every angle around that statue. But the two things that I wanted to do was create a strong silhouette and to use the cloud, which has a slight, you might notice, has a slight spectrum in it as well. The one thing I wanted to do was eliminate the trees that were in the bottom right-hand corner, but there was no angle that was available to me that would completely eliminate an intrusive background and still enable me to have the clouds and the sun behind the hand. Someday I might feel free to tackle that with a bit of Photoshop and see if I can lop that tree just to give it a little more drama. But I'm very fond of that picture. Devil's in the detail. Can anybody see anything there? That's actually, if you look behind you, you'll see that the prices are in euro. That's it's a street market in Boulevard Richard Lenoir in Paris. And, but there's a little clue in there. Can anybody see a touch of home?
Yeah.
Speak up. Yes, Maureen? What is it?
Oh, well, everybody's seen the little kangaroo.
The kangaroo.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what that represented. Maybe he was a Wallabies fan. I didn't find many of them in France, but I was drawn to the fact that I just noticed it, and I thought I'll pick out the incongruity of that. Autumn leaves are always a fascinating subject, I think. I love taking, not the least of the reasons for me retreating to Tasmania for my dotage was because you have seasons down here. They've eliminated those on the mainland mainly. So I do love my garden and how it marks the seasons. And I particularly love how it responds with, you know, with a heavy dew or whatever it happens to be. So it's just an example of how you can reveal a world with using macro. Yes. For some reason, some of these are still static. Now, what's the point of interest? What's everybody looking at?
The arse.
Yes, indeed. Well, again, when you look beyond your subject, you can see there's a motorcycle there that probably takes up about 30% of the frame, almost as much as the arse does. But if there's a point to that picture, I don't know what it is. You've got people milling around in the background. You do have clouds, Maureen. There are clouds. They're not the most spectacular or photogenic that I've ever seen, but they are there. I have to, sorry?
If I was to try and work out what was the point of that photo, you know, to put my head to it, I'd be looking and seeing there's a guy with on a wheelchair and we're at some sort of motorbike rally or something, you know, and make a story of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's how does this guy on the motorbike, like, did he used to ride a motorbike or something? He's in a wheelchair now. Was it an accident, you know?
That's all deduction, Maureen. That's not what that picture is saying, though.
That's a terrible photo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate it.
It's when you get gatherings like that, well, two things. There is, in that shadow under the triangular roof, a band performing. If that was the point of the picture, then that's a fail. If it's because you're part of the spectators, that's a fail as well. It's very hard to recognize people by their backs. I've actually, pardon me, I won't bother. Again, like the single leaf, you don't always have to be obvious about what you're saying. Again, my question is rhetorical, but what instruments does she play? Clearly, it's a harp. And it's the harpist, to me, that is the stronger element. I mean, it's a warm and friendly face who just so happens to be very talented with a particular instrument. I wanted the face, but enough of the instrument so that the clue was there, saying what she did.
I like the curve of the necklace too. With
the
curve of the harp. I think that's lovely.
Yeah, yeah. I actually quite enjoy the geometry of the strings and the dress she has on behind it too. I like that.
Who is she, Mel?
She's a Gomez. She's a Mexican harpist who from time to time comes to Australia and particularly Tasmania to conduct workshops with the harp. While she's here, she performs various concerts. And that was...
That's Sprayton, yeah?
Sorry?
She was at Sprayton.
I think she was, yes. Yes, that was actually taken at Table Cape, Table House. Yeah, she did.
I also love in that photo, Mel, the smile. You got the smile, the pearls, then the wood of the harp, and then the string setting of the harp. All those beautiful arcs matching each other. It was great.
Yes. In my defence, Reese, it's not an accident.
I didn't think so for a moment.
Well, but that's the point. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is if you can see a certain symmetry or even sometimes asymmetry that suggests something to you, look at how you're going to exploit it, you know? Look at how you're going to make it. And there's a lot of people who will look at that picture and never see that, and that's fine. But for those who want to, the picture is there. Unlike the arse and the Harley Davidson, the picture is there to reveal these things to you if you want to explore. I don't know. Oh, my little femme fromage. That was in again in France, it was in an open street market. And I have to say, the woman had a rather bored look on her face. But when I asked her if she'd pose for a photograph for me, she just burst into life. And that's the point of that is very often you've just got to be prepared to ask. Just say, do you mind if I take your photograph? And once someone complies, once someone says, "Oh yes, of course," or "we," then you can say, "Well, just pick up a chunk of your favourite cheese," you know. I did offer a proposal of marriage to her. I see we've got some fade-ins here. If you ask, just put two people together. Ask us to take the photograph. Try not to be over posy with it, but let the natural character shine through. But most people will be cooperative, particularly if you can show some semblance of knowing what you're wanting to do. Or be, oops, sorry, why are you doing that? I have to say, I've got, I'm having problems with my PowerPoint because it's just not coping with the programming I put in. But being prepared to grab pictures on the run, you know, having your camera, phone, whatever it happens to be at the ready, you can just get some great pictures. Again, technically, that's not particularly good. It's a little bit out of focus. The woman's face is in focus, but the guy's suffering from a bit of motion sickness. But again, I'll live with the flaws for the sake of having grabbed a good picture. They were setting a cracking pace too. Okay, looking at character, a lineup of people like that awaiting execution. I just think there is nothing more dull than that. Obviously, it's an official ceremony where everybody had to be paid their dues, but it doesn't make for an interesting picture at all. What you can do, even when people are doing nothing, you can animate them, just even the silly rabbit ears, whatever. But don't line them up like a firing squad. Get them to be doing something. Even a static picture like that has some animation in it. Yeah, look for the unguarded moment. Somebody who's in a conversation with somebody else who knows you're there taking pictures. It can be quite good. I thought that was quite revealing of the character of that fellow who was quite an urger. Two drunk Portuguese who not only consented to my taking their photograph, but absolutely insisted. I must tell you, stayed in a gîte in Kearney in southwest France for a while, and used to go down to the, they called it a pub too, used to go down to the pub, and there was a shrine there to rugby union, and as best we could across our language barrier, we would argue who had the best team. And my typical departure was to say, "Hello, Wallabies," every time I left the place, which is apropos nothing other than my away sickness.
I ask, can
Yeah?
I keep getting muted. Do you file these with those titles? I mean, the titles sort of make something of these photos. Like that title was great. Do you, are you going to talk about filing at all today?
No, but I can.
Later, maybe, yeah.
Yes. Maureen, every one of my photographs has a prefix that is 2 digits of year, 2 digits of month, 2 digits of day, and then a subject beyond that, and where there are multiples of the subject, number 1, 2, 3, etc. So I tend to find that I principally search my pictures by date, and I've got something like 30,000 of them on this computer, but I've got close to 80,000 of them on my backup drive there, and I'm continually adding to them. So I've got to have a system that will cope with that. Sometimes if you get people to distract your subject, it can make for a compelling picture too. I've used this in in previous talks, and I typically say there, if you're taking pictures of people, if you can't see the whites of their eyes, you're too far away. Oh, this is frustrating. Aha. Subtle poses, they can work very well. Again, using light, using a 3/4 backlight there, because the character is in black. I had to be very careful to expose for the flesh tones there. So I metered off my, you can, for those who know, you can see that by the receding background there, I was using a telephoto lens, so I metered off the palm of my hand so that I would get the flesh tones right, knowing full well that the black cap and sweater would disappear completely, but I'd have good flesh tones to work with. There's actually an old press photographer who once gave me a clue and said, when you're at an event or something, look at the lookers. If you turn back and look at the people who are looking at something that's being pointed out, here looking up the skirt of Charlemagne, I think it was, but I just thought there were some interesting expressions, and the fascination on people made for a bit of a picture. So do look at the lookers. Turn around and look at what other people are looking at. And where to look? Oh, come on. That was my dining table. Pictures are everywhere. They're always close at hand. Your immediate environment is something typically that is evolving, even if it is just throwing out the old flowers and putting in the new. But take your own environment. And yeah, that's a store, but I just, sometimes too much color is never enough. Bit of macro Reese. Again, using bokeh, you can see there's a leaf there disappearing off to the left, or no, sorry, appearing off to the left. It's coming closer to focus, but moving around and trying to pose that early morning sunlit leaf, I guess it is, flower, against the best possible background to bring out the pictorial elements of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. That's lovely. Yep.
Yeah, have a sense of humour. That's always available if your dog's an alcoholic, and we're in this together. Jack and Jill went up the hill and it all ended tragically. Show it. I think that's fun. Does my bum look big in this? Well, sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. Again, it's just mini storytelling, but you take something like that and then you move to something like that. It's before and after. It's the market in full swing, and then it's the remnants. breakfast, lunch and dinner. It's as good a name as any for a duck, I think. I have to say, my dear departed Lily, who was there, she would mother anything, and she mothered those ducks. Now, picture's worth 1,000 words. Tell a story. Here we go. This is down at Sheffield. There's a little railway there. I don't know if anyone is familiar with it or not, but I thought, yeah, and he is. Taking signs that firstly are a refresher of memory in many respects, but also they create the immediate context. Signs are very, very useful labels for storytelling. Look for the themes. It's a story about a railway, so that's not very well centered, but it does convey the idea that this is a story about a railway. So there, we introduce a loco and some rolling stock. And it's arriving at the station. The loco is being rehitched, and now it's going the other way. Detail can often be very pictorial, and again, when you get in close like that, your background drops out and you get both the shapes and movements of those, if I can use that word, of those whistles, which I think are quite pictorial. Little plaques will tell stories about the locomotive, and the fact that it was rebuilt there in 1972, I think, originally from Munich in 1908, 1906. So there's the chronology of the loco right there. And old railwaymen and young girls who are being introduced to the joy of steam. That's something that otherwise is beyond their experiences. Again, I reiterate what I said earlier, be prepared to ask people to cooperate in what you're trying to say. And yes, mothers with babies, train at the end of the, whoops. Yeah. I like the expression on that young fellow's face. Yeah. Okay. Critique your own work. The thing to do, if you start off by, as I said earlier, walking around your subject, getting your subject to rotate if it will, if it's a person, etc., doing all those kinds of things and taking sequential pictures will show you different characteristics, but it will also show you characteristics that you like, that you want to replicate in future pictures. It will show you how light plays on your subject, and you can create the most evocative image possible. Pardon me. The thing is, if you keep taking pictures like that, just go out in your backyard and walk around a rose bush. See how light affects it from different directions. Move up close, step back. Don't step back too far. That's the common mistake. Don't step back too far, but experiment and see what takes your fancy. And eventually what you will do is, by the process of selection, you'll build up a bit of a catalogue of what works for you. And that's always something to keep in mind, that you are taking the pictures for yourself. Okay, that's the end of the line in terms of the show, but I'm going to open up and I'd like to talk specifically about particular things. I hope, if nothing else, you can get some sense of the joy I get out of picture taking, but that's what I want to encourage you to do. a lot of people give up on picture taking because they're not taking the pictures they want. And that takes a little bit of persistence. And I'd suggest the only difference in talent for the best photographers and the worst photographers is practice, practice, practice. The more pictures you take, the better you will become at it. The more pictures you take and then appraise, the better you will become at it. You've got to become your own worst critic. Okay. I'm going to stop share now, and please, oh, somebody has chatted. I didn't get that. Kathy?
No, that was...
Oh, yes, the mobile phone, yes,
Yep.
yes. To say something about equipment, a mobile phone is principally a communication device. They incorporate additional things in them because they can. Because a lot of the internal workings of the mobile phone are compatible with taking pictures. So they do that, taking movies, etc. So they augment the primary function by adding these things in. A mobile phone will never take pictures comparable with the $5,000 digital single lens reflex, you know, with a suitable lens. That's photography becomes more specialized, or equipment becomes more specialized, the more specialized you want to be. I lived through the era of the transition from, actually, if I just a statistic, 1996 Atlanta Olympics, 20% of the pictures at the Atlanta Olympics were shot on digital cameras. 4 years later in Sydney, 10% of the pictures taken at the Atlanta Olympics were shot on film. The rest was on digital. And they were even experimenting then with direct transmission from the venue to, in the case of newspapers, to the newspaper's hub. Yeah, just to round that rambling out, the thing is that you've got to find what the limitations of your implement are. If it's a mobile phone, see how close you can move in to take macro pictures. Once you find that your pictures are consistently out of focus, guess what? You know you've got to come back half a meter maybe and start all over again. But it doesn't matter what you've got, you will take better pictures if you follow some of the guidance that I've been giving you here about looking beyond your picture, about the way you manage your position relative to your subject and your subject's position relative to the light source. Okay, questions, argument?
Alan's got a question.
Yes, Alan?
Yeah, sort of a comment and then a question. The quick comment is, I remember... Oh, that was interesting.
Yes.
Are we still
I think that was Bob roaring.
Okay. The comment was that I remember hearing many years ago that the best camera is the one that you have with you. And I think that's the reason why so many people are using mobiles now, because they do have them with them and they can get that shot. The question is, what do you see for yourself as the role of Photoshop in photography now?
Okay. I'll give you the simple response to that, Alan. Photoshop, I think, is marvelous for enhancing the reality. What I don't like about Photoshop is it's far too commonly used to distort or augment reality by introducing or eliminating elements that are a natural part of the photograph. In the last part of my career, where I was training both journalists and photographers, I found myself at a conference once with agricultural journalists, and one expressed disappointment that a picture that was being displayed had power lines running across it. The photographer next to me said, "Oh, well, that's what Photoshop is for." And I said, "Well, how would you feel about it if the journalists just changed a quote or whatever?" You know, the point is that reality is reality. And just like an interview should be something that if a third person was present during that interview, what you report should be recognizable to that third person. If you take a photograph, what you see in that photograph should be what anybody else standing beside you would see. And that's the discipline of my background, I would argue. As for Photoshop, it's rescued some pictures. I shoot raw files. I don't know whether that means anything. I know it will mean something to, where's Grant? Yes, yeah, I know Grant will know what I mean by raw files, but with raw files, you have embedded in the shadows and the highlights a lot of detail that normally isn't visible. Photoshop can draw that detail out marvelously. The difference between the eye is an organ managed by a brain, and the brain is able to look into a deep shadow across the room and say, I know there's books on that bookshelf, right? So I see books on that bookshelf. If I take a photograph, the scene is too contrasty. I'll never see the books. If I take a picture with a raw file, that detail is captured and it can be dug out with Photoshop. So if Photoshop, the nature of Photoshop is such that it's a marvelous tool for improving the pictures. I just don't like it as a tool for distorting the pictures.
The follow-up, I suppose, to that is that in the closely related discipline of painting,
yes,
the artist, there's an old saying that the artist has as much right to move a tree as the silly bugger who put it in the wrong place to start with. So maybe Photoshop is the equivalent of moving the tree.
Yeah, and in the art of photography, I have no argument against that. In fact, I think some of the most striking photography I've seen has been with montages where you've got multiple images drawn from disparate sources, cobbled together to make a particular statement. And that's the art of photography, and I dips my lid to that, just the same as I agree entirely. If you've got the paintbrush, you are master of the universe.
But surely that's digital art rather than photography. They are two different things.
Bingo. Yeah, agree entirely. And I, you know, my career has been illustrative. I'm trying to make stories with pictures. I'm trying to make a picture that's worth 1,100 words, allowing for inflation. I guess that's the guardrails within which I operate. If I am going to do photographic art, then I'll throw those guardrails away and yeah, go mad, go nuts. Sorry, my fireplace is groaning at me. Kathy, yeah? Oops, you're muted.
Thank you. Now I'm right. A lot of the photos I like to take of fungi and so on are in low light. And also, I don't want to carry a lot of heavy equipment with me because I can't. But yes. I just wondered if you've got any tips other than you've brought up about getting in the right angle helps, but any other tips? If you're
working with a mobile phone or camera, find out the point at which you can get as close to your subject as possible. Now, if for whatever reason, and very often it's because of the places they're located, they're in dark, shady places, a simple little LED light will help augment. You can, even the light on your mobile phone will help. but again, it takes a lot of the dimension out of the image, you know. If you've got an LED torch that you can hold even 15 degrees off the angle of view, that will help sculpt the light a little bit, sculpt the subject a little bit. Yeah. Try that. Try it with if your phone has a flashlight on it or a modeling light which stays on constantly. Modeling lights are good because you can turn it on and you can move around just to see where your shadows fall and how they ruin things.
Right.
Well,
Yes.
Well,
sorry, Kathy?
Oh, it's just I like to take the photo so I can identify the fungi when I get home. If, you know, yeah, that's all.
Beware with LEDs, the colour shift though too. You'll find that LEDs are typically quite blue, although you can get warm LED bulbs, I know. Yeah.
Grant, did you have a comment there or something?
Grant, you were waving. Yes, Maureen, I'll come back.
Oh, it's just that to follow on from there. When I found fungi in the deep bush that are so, their colour is fluorescent virtually.
Yeah.
And it's you just can't get that colour. I can't, and I'm wondering whether that LED stuff is going to change the colour dramatically.
Oh, it will. It doesn't matter what you do, you will change the colour. Even if you introduce more sunlight, you will change the colour. Can I tell you, on photo safaris that I've gone on, I don't know if anybody here has a steering wheel cover that has a reflective surface, a silver reflective surface. I used to carry one of those things rolled up, and in fact I still do. I still have one out in the garage. If I found myself in a situation where I couldn't get light into a subject, if you can manipulate that so that you get reflected sunlight back in there, that's going to be your most natural light. And you really do need to have somebody with you to hold a reflector. Reflectors are very good for using when taking portraits of people too, because again, it's that soft diffuse light. The perfect portrait has a 2:1 light ratio. If I can just explain that you've got twice as much light on one side of the face as you have on the other, because that way you will have very bright highlights but good color saturation. You'll have good color saturation in the shadow, but not so dark as to obscure the details. 2:1 isn't ideal. Unfortunately, the world doesn't always operate for us that way. Now, oh, Grant's gone. Was it something I said, Grant? Any other, Maureen, if I can just briefly reiterate what I was saying about cataloguing earlier, and I used that date catalogue. I try to make sure that every photograph has got either in the name, pardon me, or in a keyword, something that denotes what I'm taking. For example, just as I was able to find that reflection at Penguin Beach because I had Penguin Beach in the title. So when I searched by title, I couldn't find it. When I searched reflections, I found it. And reflections was in keywords. So if you use keywords to catalogue, with more detail, you can even have, you know, for example, if you take a group shot and there's 8 people in the group shot, if you put names in the keywords, they're still searchable. Well, they are in my system anyway. Yeah. Anyone else?
Sounds like that's it. Thank you, Mel.
You're very welcome. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, cheers, Mel.
And now I want you all to go out and spend an hour taking pictures, okay?
Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Good. Bye-bye all.
Thank you.
Okay. And next week we have Alan Wright being our presenter. So look forward to seeing you all again then.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
all.
It's
Bye.
really fun, Mel. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Mel.
Bye.
Mel,
Yes.
Mel, stick
Yes,
around.
ma'am.
I want to see my bowl.
Oh,
Gee, you got in there quickly, Maureen. I was
You have to.
I was just about to click the
Yeah.
end button.
Won't take
Okay, I'll catch up with you on Friday, Reese.
Yes, no worries, Alan.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. How's your arm or whatever it was, Ruth?
Absolutely wonderful. Look at my healing capacity.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Wow.
I was really pleased with it, actually, because it was quite gory when I did it.
Yeah, geez, yeah. Oh, well, good lesson.
Maureen,
Yes, yeah. Yes, that's fine.
great.
Okay, another
It
time.
must forever remain a secret how I came to be in possession of it.
Yeah, obviously not for a haircut, Mel, is all I can say.
Thanks for a great session, Mel. That was
Yeah,
good.
it was good.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye now.
See you later.